Hello, Katie. It's a pleasure of me to be here with you. And the room's name is your father's name, Clerides' name. So at one of the special private rooms of the CVAR, here today we are together. We know each other for a very long period of time. And I consider you one of my dearest and best friends from here. And I would like to thank to another dearest friend, Rita Severis, that she invited us, both of us, today here for a cup of coffee. And would be good. How are you?
Fine. I'm really happy to be here with you too, Meltem, because I feel like I've known you for a long time. As you say, we're good friends. And for me, it's quite emotional to be in this room because it's, it was my father's library and study, and I entrusted it to Rita because, she has this wonderful museum here, which has a bicommunal context as well, or a multi-communal context. And I felt it was, the right place for his things to be, because he always wanted to see a peaceful and reunited Cyprus. Mm-hmm. And even though he didn't manage it, at least some of us are still working. I know you've been involved in bicommunal work and reconciliation work for many, many years and had many initiatives. And you're actually responsible for one of the latest initiatives. So, yes. I have to congratulate you for that. And thank you that you included me in that new initiative.
Yes, it's not my initiative, it's our initiative. So we don't any other option than working for a peaceful coexistence on our shared island, dear Katie. And looking from this respect, your father is an important historical figure, and as his daughter, Katie Clerides, to find out Katie Clerides' name on the same side with the peace lovers and peace builders and peace practitioners is itself a huge contribution towards the struggles and efforts of peaceful coexistence, I believe so. Recently, nowadays, we are watching another war in Ukraine, and the events in there reminds us once more that it is only a spark of kindle to start another war. And we have the experience of war as Cypriots, dear Katie, in Cyprus. And we know that in the wars there are no winners or losers. We all at the end, especially the vulnerable, ordinary people, but also the intellectuals, everybody pays the price of war. We are still paying as Turkish Cypriots, Greek Cypriots, and all other communities living on this island, still paying the price. And it reminds me again that since we hadn't been able to reach a settlement yet, in fact, we are living in a ceasefire conditions. So we are still living on a conflict situation, even not post-conflict, because there is no agreement, there is no settlement. And I think, I believe from the deep of my heart that nothing is more urgent than trying to find out a solution together with the people of activists, workers, elites, politicians, academics across Cyprus. And this initiative that I thought to give the initiative the name Cyprus Peace Center, and when I applied for the registration, I found out that it was already registered. There was a already registered Cyprus Peace Center of, they told me it was Katie and Kostas Clerides. So I said that great minds think alike. So our name of the initiative at the moment is Cyprus Peace and Dialogue Center. It's a bi-communal initiative that we aim to play a role of umbrella structure to bring together not only grassroots or ordinary, let me say, which they are the most important sections of the communities, in fact, but not only grassroots, but also the senior level decision makers, former or current, with the criteria of being pro solution of Cyprus, which the name of the solution is obvious under the UN parameters, of course, bi-zonal, bi-communal federation, depending on political equality. This is the name, and content is there. And in fact, I was one of the was a lucky or not lucky personalities who've been in Crans-Montana that it crashed. We failed once more from the historical perspective in there. As the special advisor to the former Turkish Cypriot leader Mustafa Akıncı, I was there, and I seen how close we are to a settlement. So we should take it from there and finally be wise enough to find the ways and means to reach this settlement. Otherwise, this instability as ruined the previous generations' lives would continue ruining the next generation's lives as well. And the Peace Center, Cyprus Peace and Dialogue Center, we have 4 working groups, as you work for all, in fact, but you prefer to work for the reconciliation of grassroots and culture, so it's good. But we have also policy, and on policy we are working on, if we manage so, on policy recommendations with the not ordinary at there, but with those experts. The majority team members of the group are women. I prefer this unconscious because I really believe that we should reflect the gender equality perspective on the negotiations, on the accumulated documents and everything on the process of negotiations. So most of them are they themselves former or even current members of the teams that worked for these negotiations, and also work on certain confidence building measures to mature them. And if we manage, we will be able to say that jointly we agreed on that we have a base, still it is possible, and the way is this or that, X and Y, to give a joint message with a joint voice to international community and also to our respective communities. Because recently, unfortunately, we should accept the situation that our respective communities and the public opinion, they don't have much hope that we can reach a settlement or a solution. So in order to keep this spirit at least alive, we should keep working on it together, dear Katie.
I totally agree with you, and I'm very pleased with the dialogue aspect of the project. I mean, I think it's very important to try and bring different groups of people together because, as you said, Meltem, most people have more or less accepted the situation as it is. They're rather apathetic. And then so many other things are happening, you know, like COVID, which has influenced everybody's life in a difficult but different way. So I think that, you know, it's important to bring different groups of people together. And that's why I wanted to join that group that was more concerned with bringing, for instance, NGOs together or trade unions or lawyers, doctors, because we had more of that in the past and it sort of died out. I can remember a time when there were lots of different groups of people in dialogue, and now there's hardly anybody in dialogue. And you know, that's one level, the dialogue and the misperceptions on both sides about what happened in Montana. Everybody has a different version of who's to blame and so on. So, you know, I think open discussion is very important. But at the same time, I see in Cyprus this problem with the political leadership. It's not, the general political leadership is not helping in this direction. And although I agree with you that it's important to get people who think the same way together, it's also, for me, important to try and find a way to reach all those people who are apathetic at the moment or negative about a solution. And this is, you know, my big worry, that we haven't really found a way to be able to do that. I don't have any concrete suggestions at this point in time, but I think we have to also try and engage in dialogue, you know, some of these other groups who are more negative about a solution.
Yeah. Dear Katie, what makes me to think that we should start with those vehemently pro-solution personalities is exactly in order to be able to give a joint message to the apathetic and to those negative to solution. At least we should be able to show them that not to expect to leadership that they are not, we don't believe that they are very much supportive to the solution, but at least to show them that Meltem and Katie or Rita and Ayşe or Maria and Emete, they can agree on a piece of paper and say together that we are fine with what we have reached up to the Crans-Montana. We endorse all the agreed positions. We don't want to renegotiate anything. We just need to keep from there and complete it. And we have the courage, and we have the wisdom, and we have the leadership to do it. We think that it's possible. To be able to say this would give the respective communities and public opinions to think twice, because at the moment, what is the argument behind their negativeness is that even the Talat and Christofias couldn't make it. Even Anastasiadis and Akıncı couldn't reach it. So it's impossible. Let me share the perceptions in among the Turkish Cypriot community, and then you can reflect the perception in the Greek Cypriot community mainly. Of course, they are not homogeneous, but what gained the heavy let me say, argument among the Turkish Cypriot community is that they think that Greek Cypriot leadership and community altogether, they don't want to share power, they don't want to share wealth. They feel comfortable after 1974 because they are recognized, internationally recognized, and they enjoyed all the rights and everything, opportunities of having the Republic of Cyprus, quote unquote, which was also in fact bi-communal functional federation whatsoever, but they grasp it and they don't want to share, they don't want to receive the Turkish Cypriot community even back to it, let alone the BBF style of solution or settlement. They think that even Turkish Cypriots altogether, if they say that, okay, we agree to come back to the Turkish Republic of Cyprus with all its institutions, the legislative councils and representative councils and the Council of Ministers and everything, they would face with a total resistance to this because let me remind that the Republic of Cyprus was also failed. So we have such challenges. And after Crans-Montana, the disappointment grew even higher percentages because they are saying that two leaders who said yes to Annan Plan, which was Mr. Anastasiadis and Mr. Akıncı, they failed to reach a settlement. Whomever is responsible, it doesn't matter. At the end, we don't have the settlement. But let's hope that it was because of Mr. Anastasiadis or vice versa, I don't know. Because if the reason is one person's fault or any other interests of elections or whatsoever, then this means that when they changed, we will find a solution. But I think it's bigger than, the reasons are bigger than one personality or not, which is, whatever the reasons we can discuss, especially in the Greek Cypriot community, this is what we see from our window, let me say. The leaderships, they didn't educate their community regarding the convergences, even regarding what BBF is, what the political equality means, that political equality is not something strange coming from the space. It is itself indispensable part of a federation. So even Germany is a federation. This example, that example, but Cypriot style federal solution, this BBF solution, is an accumulated document of the years-long negotiations. And this is the only agreeable and acceptable by all sides way. And that's why it is there and endorsed by the United Nations and the Security Council. This is what all stakeholders said, yes, I find it acceptable. Maybe not ideal, but I personally believe that it is also the ideal solution. to respect each other, to find the way to live and coexist together as communities in a federal state. So from our window, we see that since they didn't educate their community, the Greek Cypriot community, when we come to the points that there is a possibility to finalize it, then they are afraid from their community not to be elected again, or not to be supported by the community, or to be attacked by certain circles. So this is sort of chicken and egg dichotomy. You don't educate, so you don't play the leadership. Because I know this, it was the same among the Turkish Cypriot community as well until the process of the Annan Plan. But during the Annan Plan, I myself was a newly graduated historian and employed at the university. And the dominant ideology of the time was that to say no to this Annan Plan. But I myself, together with other ordinary people, we start to hear about first some civil society activists, leaders, political parties, union leaders, journalists, media presenters, and one by one we felt responsible to go out loudly and say that yes, this is fine, this is acceptable, this is a way that could be agreed by all sides and would take us to a settlement, which is better than continuing under ceasefire conditions and waiting for a sparkling kindle of another thing to turn back to the war conditions whatsoever. And I remember that at the time, since we were, I mean myself also, a sort of from the community, sort of from the mainstream, let me say. They were taking me to village, these of the time leaderships, village to village, and they create opportunities, people like me, to talk to address to the villagers. Instead of addressing them, the usual suspects leaders, they preferred Meltem, Onurkan, Samani, and this is how I became Meltem, Onurkan, Samani, sharing her opinions and taking the risks of losing his job or whatsoever. We should take some risks. But this what happened at the end, it resulted at this campaign that almost even the remote places of the villages and regions, everybody had an idea about the content of the prospective settlement whatsoever. The leaderships and the political elites and also civil society elites were courageous enough, saying publicly and loudly, for example, that they should be given back some territory. This is a must. This is what we were discussing and negotiating. And it was even Mr. Denktash who discussed these things. So it is not that something very new. So they said that about the property thing should be compensated. Some of them should be restored. Some of them would be this and that. So they started loudly with even the most controversial and most sensitive issues about the community that are usually manipulated by the ultra nationals who are against any kind of settlement. But still they had the leadership to say that, yes, we will do this because the name of the settlement is this: it should be for the benefit of all, not only for the benefit of Turkish Cypriots or for the benefit of Turkey or for the benefit of Greek or Greek Cypriot whatsoever, but it should be acceptable for all of us. So we need to cultivate a culture of compromise. Otherwise, the result would be warfare and nothing else at the end.
This is, what we can see as logical people, Meltem. But I think, one of the problems on the Greek side, we were talking about perceptions, is to the Greek Cypriots, the federal solution is not a desirable solution. It's the only one that could be agreed. And it seems to the majority of Greek Cypriots unfair that 20% of the population should have the same decision-making powers as 80%. Unfortunately, the Greek Cypriot community still thinks in terms of majority and minority. And there's another problem on our side, I think, in that we feel that the land was taken by an invasion, by a foreign force, and we ignore all the things which happened before, which led up to that situation. So it seems to us like, to the average Greek Cypriot, like an injustice, a very big injustice, and why should I come to terms with this injustice? And unfortunately, I think the Greek psychology is, I cut off my nose, even though that will do damage to my face. Instead of compromising and moving forward, we're always looking back and saying this is not fair. Then we talk about international law, and we imagine that international law is going to put the situation right, which of course it's not. I mean, look at Ukraine, as you said. There's no international law. It's the power of the stronger. So, I mean, I have very different approach. I think myself we should try and come to terms with Turkey as well. I mean, Turkey is a big player. The other perception on our side in the Greek Cypriot community is that actually Turkey is running the show. Turkish Cypriots are just, puppets, which of course is a misperception. But we need to sort of rethink the whole thing and our relationships, because if you can't win something by war, which we definitely can't, and which wouldn't be of any use to any of us, we have to compromise, and we have to work out a reasonable compromise. But I agree with you. Unfortunately, the Greek Cypriot leadership has never really explained to people what this compromise is going to mean. And unfortunately, over time, too, I mean, they have been raising the red line, in the sense that in the past we talked about, we never said Turkey would not be a guarantor power. We said, we want to change the guarantees. Now we are saying Turkey should not have the right, nobody should have the right of guarantee, because we are a member of the European Union. So we also keep changing the positions. Of course, the other side does it too, but unfortunately, at the political level, there's a lot of game playing. People need to get re-elected, and as you say, most of the time they're following the people rather than leading the people. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the problems that I face, is having been involved in politics as a member of parliament and so on. Sometimes you know what is the right thing to do, but you know that if you do it, nobody is going to accept it. Mm-hmm. So you get trapped in a way. So this is not to make excuses for anybody, but it's just that the political and the intellectual is always, I think, at two different levels. That on the political level, so many games are being played by so many players that it's really often hard to see a way through. But that shouldn't stop us from doing what needs to be done. I totally agree with you. Mm-hmm. And what we have before us now is a bicommunal, bizonal federation. That's the bottom line. Or else, we end up as two states, which would be very sad. So we need to, put all our efforts into working for, the possible solution.
Yeah. And the worst scenario, even worse than two states, is to keep the status quo ongoing, like it's as ceasefire like this. This is even worse than two states, because two states is not good. It is not acceptable. That's why it is not good. If it is acceptable by both sides, then maybe this idea, let me say, or scenario would also be negotiated. But what would happen up to now, that all these accumulated negotiations at the end, and it was very clear that two-state solution was not the feasible one. But I don't blame even to those who support two-state solution, especially among the Turkish Cypriot community, because they were saying that Greek Cypriot leadership and naturally the public opinion, if they would never accept, and they don't want bi-communal, bi-zonal federation depending on political equality, as you said, if they consider the situation as a majority and minority and they prefer a unitary state, then it is a huge lie on the official negotiation table, that the Greek Cypriot or Greek part of the conflict are not sincere in saying that they accept BBF, and it is the other side who is not willing and who is not supportive. This is the perception which has quite right, in fact. But if we turn back to our original question, what we could do as responsible, as human, as from another perspective, that we let's hope that we are looking from another angle to the issue, not a separatist way, but we feel in our heart that we should find the solutions, actionable solutions jointly. I mean, the cross-community actionable solutions, means and ways to do together. That's why our initiative that we are working together is not only about policy, is not only about grassroots dialogue and cultural reconciliation, but also networking to bring together all those civil society organizations, NGOs, union representations, personalities, key personalities who have a shared concern about their country and about their future, to come together to discuss and find the ways out together. And of course, business people and also young people, they should survive in the meantime. So we should also support them for their joint investments and for their entrepreneurship initiatives whatsoever. With such a framework, and when we will be able to reach to refine one page about the pros and cons and challenges as well, put them on the list, then I'm sure that we will be able to find the way. But we are in total agreement that we need to go out to the communities for positive messages and explain them and educate them about the benefits of a solution. But with the one difference, not in a sloganic way, because they don't believe anymore. They don't want to hear, let's peace, let's unite, had a reunification. This is enough for them, and this would not educate them. We should educate and inform them in order to have their informed decision, because at the end we will need 2 referenda, and we will receive their yes votes from both communities. And for being able to make a decision, they should be informed well about the convergences, for example. They should be well informed that, as I said in the beginning, political equality or guarantorship, or about the items on territory and property and economy and EU matters, everything, they should be well informed. And to see that these are not negative, would not give harm to anybody. In fact, this is because this is that demonized ideas that used for manipulation of the public opinion by those who are against, for one reason or another, against of a solution or a settlement or finding a joint agreed plan on Cyprus for one reason or another. They prefer the conflict to continue, but from the conflict, who gain, we should rethink. We should show them who are the gainers, who are the winners from the conflict, and who are the losers. Yeah.
I think it's very important for Greek Cypriots to realize that the status quo doesn't remain stable. It changes all the time, and it gets worse. I mean, we've seen the latest developments in Varosha. You know, nothing stays the same. Everything changes, even if it changes slowly. But there is this misconception on our side that the status quo is better than a solution, you know, because it's not the solution we want. People have to realize that the status quo doesn't stay stable. It's always changing, and it changes for the worse as far as our side is concerned, because it becomes more and more difficult to negotiate return of any territory and so on. So this is another challenge that we face, to explain to people that we really need a solution. And maybe this is why now all of a sudden, you know, our side has started talking about confidence-building measures, even though their suggested confidence-building measure, I don't think has a chance of success, because they're talking about, you know, Varosha in exchange for Ercan, and this is an old suggestion, which I don't think is going to open new doors. But nevertheless, it indicates that people on our side are beginning to realize that the status quo doesn't stay stable. It gets worse all the time for us. And, you know, maybe, hopefully, this may be a message to people that we need to start thinking again in terms of negotiating, trying to get back to the negotiating table and discussing what's already been agreed. As you say, there's a whole body of work there, which shouldn't go to waste.
Yes, and good to remind us these confidence-building measures, that it's important, in fact, would help, but it should come after taking opinion, after negotiated or at least discussed between two sides, or not to say two sides. For example, as our initiative, the groups of people jointly from both communities, those who are experts on, of course, the confidence building measures and on negotiations, policy groups as well. It would be good to first to discuss and then come as recommendations or proposals. Otherwise, it becomes one side's proposal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's now Mr. Anastasiadis' proposals, or Mr. Kasoulides, even not for Mr. Kasoulides now. It's the Greek Cypriot proposals without taking the opinion, reflection, let alone taking the opinion, reflection of the current Turkish Cypriot leadership of the government, but not us, even not opinion of those vehemently pro-solution segments of the Turkish Cypriot community. Then what happens? Let alone having automatic defensive approach from the other community, but also monocommunally, other political parties start criticizing the proposals. Let me say, because it becomes DC's proposal, sort of, you know, what I mean.
Yes,
they
exactly.
are saying, for example, from Akel, they start saying that this is Taiwanization, so we are not China, they are not Taiwan. So without maturing it, maybe in this way that we try to put some efforts, would give support to the leaderships there. Informally, we can work, we can see, we can recommend or propose, not to say propose, recommend at least to them, and after this they can propose ideas. But I'm saying for both sides. And I found the effort of Mr. Kasoulides very precious, should be negotiated, but because of the reasons that I'm already try to list it, it starts make a negative start, let me say. Yeah.
I've always felt that, you know, what should happen is we need to sit around the table, all of us who are involved in the Cyprus problem, I mean the different sides, and each one knows what its side can accept, what it needs. But we need to sit around the table and discuss it as if we were trying to jointly solve the problem, not against each other all the time.
Yes.
And then, you know, you can give and take. I need this, you need that. I remember it was actually a Turkish Cypriot friend who said this at one of the bicommunal groups that we worked in the old days. And he said, we need to sit around the table and discuss the problem as if it was a joint problem. You know, not as opposing sides all the time. But it's never been, unfortunately, possible to do that. I was hoping that, you know, at different stages, maybe, for instance, when I first saw Mr. Anastasiadis and Mr. Akinci together, I thought, yeah, they'll be able to do it.
Yes.
But then, you know, what happens is what you said, that the internal politics on each side comes in, and that makes it even more difficult because everybody wants to promote their party and you know, as you say now with the recent proposal, the party which didn't suggest it is criticizing it and so on. So we really need to somehow get the people who are negotiating somehow to block out the surroundings and sit down and work at it as if it was a joint problem, and not always being opposing sides. But obviously, for politicians, it's not very easy to do that. But as you say, we can do it as civil society.
So, main message for today's chat of us over a cup of coffee. maybe is that the efforts should be jointly taken. And as you said, this is the reason why we prefer to start with the similar-minded people, at least those who believe that they are for a settlement, to come together to work on negotiations, confidence-building measures, how to promote a culture of peace, how to educate people on convergences, how to give support to young people to build a life on this island together, a business, to get profit, to live, to survive, all together to share our experiences jointly again, not to have two sides on the table. And you know that our exercises as the team members of the working groups, that we have working groups now for policy, for second group, for third group, we are on the same side. Right. We don't see ourselves as Greek Cypriots or Turkish Cypriots or as two sides or bilateral sides. We genuinely and sincerely try to discuss what solutions, what means and ways would be best for all communities on this island and would be acceptable for all. And all of them should feel themselves safe and secure and also equal on a prospective settlement of this island. And we can remind them the formula once more. And maybe we can go to villages in the Paphos, in the Karpaz, in the Morpho, in Limassol, Larnaca, whatsoever, together. Maybe this time, this informing the public opinion should be by joint groups of people together, like us. If Meltem and Katie would go and say something, or we can invite accordingly. We can make research and poll on different regions to see whom they would listen from the Turkish Cypriot community. I mean, not just here, but also think on it, and from Greek Cypriot community, which names would be helpful to take with us, that they themselves would address them, would be better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, we need to keep the lines of communication open, and we need to do a lot of things together. Yes. So that's why I'm very happy that, for instance, this afternoon, Emete and I are going to have a meeting with one of the ecology groups and see if we can find a partner in the north. Perfect. To do something together, to show people that, this is our island and we all need to take care of it from the ecological point of view, give messages that we are together and not separate.
Perfect. Not only reaching out, not only to bi-communal groups, but also monocommunal groups who have no connection, no contact with each other, but they have similar concerns on environment, on health, on elderly people, on animal welfare, and to contribute on this would be a huge support, I think, to the process.
So this is our challenge.
Yeah.
This is our challenge.
Yeah.